Jam Entertainment.
Ms. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Sue. I appreciate the opportunity to join you on your show today.
Well, anytime we have an opportunity to speak to a presidential candidate about their ideas and plans for the country, we welcome you. So it's indeed our pleasure. Now, I know you're probably pressed for time. So is it okay if we just delve right into the questions?
Let's jump right in. Absolutely.
Awesome. Because we live in a rural America, my first question to you as a presidential candidate, if you're in the White House, what would you do for rural America?
I would begin with really focusing and understanding that we as a country should not be measuring the value of our people through how rich or poor those communities are. And I've seen throughout my service in government, both at the state, local, and federal level, how unfortunately that's usually the case, that the communities that maybe don't have as much economic opportunity as others in the urban corridors are left and forgotten, whether you're talking about rural healthcare and hospitals or education or investments in just basic infrastructure needs like clean water, safe roads and bridges, dependable power, the basic sewage, septic tanks. I mean, the basic things that we depend on to survive. And I think it's important to begin with that baseline and recognizing that we stand together as Americans, and the prosperity that we experience in this country is not due to only a handful of people who hold on to the wealth, but is due to the hard work of Americans both today and the generations who have come before us. And we have to invest in our people based on that value. And so it's really going in and seeing how at the federal level, even as there are local differences in how different things are funded or taxed in order to pay for those things, that the role of the federal government is to ensure that there is that equity there, and to be able to take the taxpayer dollars that we all pitch in to the federal government to be able to do so. I think one area we can get into, every one of these things that I've talked about, I think deserve much more resources and attention in empowering local governments and local leaders to be able to find the best solutions that work best for them. But at an individual level, I think a proposal that I think is long overdue being implemented is one of a universal basic income, because we see how Americans are struggling. So many Americans, I think 70 to 80%, the statistics show are living paycheck to paycheck, barely able to afford to keep a roof over their head, buy the medicine they need for their loved ones, pay for the food to put on the table, and education and other needs that they have. There's no room for error in this. And so universal basic income, the proposal that I'm pushing forward, would provide $1,000 a month to every adult in this country who makes less than $200,000 a year, providing that layer of economic security that won't replace, it won't say, okay, everybody can go and retire. It's not enough to pay for everything, but it provides that layer of security to better empower individuals to get out of this cycle of just survival and to begin to look at, hey, how do I get better opportunities, or how can I better take care of my family and my kids?
Well, I can tell you that being a resident myself here in a rural area, an extra $1,000 a month is it would go a long way, would mean a lot. Yeah. Totally a lot. Now I heard a lot in that, and I just want to just
Absolutely.
go down a little smaller on what's the plan as far as with getting equitable business loans for Black and Brown Americans, as well as education that measures up with other Americans across the country.
Truly, yeah, this empowerment at an individual level, both through education and training, as well as support for small business owners, and bringing jobs and those opportunities to our rural communities, to our Black and Brown communities that are often the ones that are left behind and forgotten, is absolutely a priority. I remember back, I was in my early 20s, and I was looking at investing in some real estate. I didn't have very much money, but I saw an opportunity in a rural community, said, okay, here's something that was within reach, that I could buy a small little apartment, like an 8-unit house, basically, for $300,000. And I could kind of start to earn a passive income in that way. So I went to the bank, had good credit, didn't have that much cash, but I thought I could get a loan for $300,000. And what I was told was, because it was a business loan, there was no way they would give me a loan anything less than, I think it was $500,000 at that time. This was probably about 15 years ago. And I didn't understand how, for an individual who's investing in a small business or looking for a smaller amount of capital, the banks are only interested in working with you if you're gonna borrow $500,000 or $1 million. And that goes against the very principle of recognizing our small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and being able to empower individuals with these smaller loans or micro loans that can get you from point A to point B, and bring that investment into the communities often that need it most. So throughout my time in Congress and as president, I have been and will continue to be a strong advocate for that individual and direct empowerment. Access to capital often being the number one barrier that stands in the way of starting a small business or pursuing that opportunity, especially in our rural and minority communities. And then hand in hand with that is I just want to touch quickly on the education piece. It's important, especially as we see higher and higher costs of tuition, higher student debt rates, interest rates increasing for student loans, that we really focus on how we can best deliver quality education, whether it be a 4-year degree, whether it's through an HBCU, a state college, community college, or others, make it so it's truly affordable and accessible, and also not lose sight of how every single one of us is not made the same. And some people say, I don't want to go spend money on a 4-year degree because I don't need it, but I want to go and get this skill as a mechanic, or as a plumber or an electrician, or as a welder, or woodworking, whatever. There's so many different trades and skills that are needed in this country that don't get that kind of attention in providing opportunity to people that they deserve. Again, the value of who we are as individuals is not measured by what kind of piece of paper or degree that we have. It exists intrinsically in who we are, and therefore let's empower people in our country to pursue the profession or paths that they choose, and we'll be better off as a country, and we'll have, I think, a much happier society.
I totally agree with that. I'm a big proponent of people living their dreams. I think it reduces crime, it reduces stress, disease, and depression. So I totally support that, and I would love to see some of those ideas implemented.
Your point there, Sue, I think is important. How we are, we're seeing higher and higher rates of suicide, not only amongst veterans, but amongst people of all different backgrounds. We're seeing more and more people stressed out, higher numbers of people dealing with different mental health struggles and depression and others. And instead of just saying, well, why don't we dish out more of these pharmaceutical drugs to try to numb the pain or struggle or suffering or challenge that they're dealing with, let's focus on how we can better empower people to pursue their dreams, as you said, just in a deep way, find that individual and spiritual happiness that I think is just lacking in a country that's driven by, you have to meet this standard, you have to work 80 hours a week, you have to do this and that. And really it's like, okay, for what?
Right.
If you're unhappy, then, and what is it all really for?
Exactly. It's for nothing. And so I don't believe in living a routine, mundane life. We all have a purpose. And as soon as we get about the business of living our purpose, the world will be a much better place.
Absolutely.
I totally love that. What are your plans to help women as far as equality in the workplace, equal pay?
Terrible. Yeah. Isn't it terrible that we even have to have this conversation
in 2020?
In 2020, exactly. And how, what is it? It's somewhere like 76 cents that women make to every dollar that men make. And that number goes lower and lower for Black women, for brown women, for Hispanic women. And you just see how unequal this society in the most prosperous, wealthy nation in the world still is today, how far behind we are. I've supported legislation in Congress, the Equal Pay Act, to be able to really enshrine this into law and to have some accountability measures there for those businesses that don't pay the same for men and women who are doing the exact same work. But look, I think there's got to be more than that. It really goes to changing the mindset that we have in our country, once again, that values people for who we are and what we're bringing to the table. It's not an easy process, but I think it starts with leadership. And what better way to start than electing a woman of color to the White House? How about that?
I'll tell you, I love the mindset thing. Napoleon Hill said the mind can do one of two things. It can either build or it can destroy.
So true.
So it's up to us.
Absolutely.
As far as it goes. So I really love that. Last question. So I got to make it a really, really great question. Really great.
All right.
Why should we select you as our next president of the United States?
It is time for a new generation of leadership in this country. It's important, though, that as voters are looking for a new generation of leadership, that we understand that it's not only about that. The voters also want to know that there's experience there. Experience that will enable our next president to walk in and to serve as commander-in-chief of our armed forces, as well as experience that will enable our president to be able to work with Congress to get things done. Something that is essential. You've got to be able to work across the aisle, deal with people who have many different ideas on how we solve the problems of today, treat people with respect in order to accomplish that objective, and ultimately always keep the well-being and the interests of the American people first. I have experience in both of these areas, and this is what I offer to the American people. I bring the experience of having served as a soldier now still for almost 17 years in the Army National Guard. I've deployed twice to the Middle East, and I have experience serving at every level of government as a state rep in Hawaii, as a city council member in Honolulu, one of the largest and most powerful city councils in the country, as well as a member of Congress now for 7 going on 8 years, where I've been really focused on national security and foreign policy. And I've been able to pass legislation, even as a Democrat, under a Republican majority in the House. So as president, I will serve you, every single American, treat everyone with respect, and understand truly that when we come from a place of love, motivated by a love of country and a love and care for each other, just as people, as fellow Americans, we can accomplish anything. And this is my personal commitment to every American in this country, that every single day I will serve you and ensure that our White House becomes a beacon of light that represents respect, integrity, honor, and service.
Wow, well said. And from one veteran to another, thank you so much for your service.
Thank you for yours.
Yes. Well, listen, that's all the time we have, but I will extend this invite that anytime you want to come back on the Sue Ham Show, we have an open door policy for you.
Thank you. It's really been a privilege, Sue, to be able to share this time with you. It's never enough time goes by when you're having fun. So I'd love to be able to continue the conversation at another time and hopefully be able to meet you there in South Carolina soon.
We'd love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Aloha.
Sue Ham Entertainment.